for even more. Former prosecutor Alafair Burke is breathing a sigh of relief. She lived in Wichita at the time many of these murders occurred. Psychologist Howard Brodsky has helped the police on the BTK case since the 70s, and also with us, the accused killer's neighbor, Jim Reno. Welcome to the program, everyone. Alafair, you grew up in Wichita during the time period of these murders. What was that like?
Well, we moved to Wichita from southern Florida, and my parents envisioned this idyllic, quiet Midwestern town, and one of the first things we learned when we moved there was that we lived in a neighborhood that was literally being stalked by a serial killer. It was definitely a wake-up call for me as an 8-year-old to find out that that kind of evil existed, and it was right in our community.
You know, I've heard that what some people did as soon as they came home was they checked their phones.
The phone.
Tell us why.
Well, the police were very reserved, as they continue to be to this day, with information about the case, and so a lot of it was based on rumor, but one thing that people did know was that he cut the phone cords. So when we came home, the first thing you did is check the dial tone so that you knew that at least that hadn't occurred. We kept our basement door locked because another rumor was that he got in through basements, although that doesn't seem to be true. So everything we did was very much designed to protect ourselves from this kind of boogeyman.
Well, Dr. Brodsky, let me bring you into this discussion because the BTK killer laid low for many years, even decades. Why would he come out of the woodwork again?
Well, you know, this guy has a high need for attention. Maybe he was doing something else to get his attention, needs met, but at this point he was definitely after notoriety. There's a lot of different thoughts about why that might be. One conjecture is that maybe he's ill, maybe he's terminally ill, and he wants to get this wrapped up during this phase of his life while he's still alive.
You know, what's especially chilling, Dr. Brodsky, is the fact that he's a family man, active in his church, employed. The guy wears a badge. He lives a double life. He doesn't fit the profile of what we would have expected for the BTK killer.
Right. I expected a fellow who would be much more isolated because, you know, from the stuff that we know about this guy, his attitudes were so off the map that it was hard to figure that he could find a setting that he could function in. And he's also a very, very good actor. I think the real guy is the BTK guy, and he's acting in all these other settings. And that every interaction that he had, he was plotting how he was going to pull the wool over these people's eyes. This fellow takes advantage of people. He is disloyal. He is contemptful. And he takes advantage and manipulates everyone he runs into.
Well, Jim Reno, you are a neighbor of Dennis Rader's. How is your neighborhood reacting to this news?
Most are shocked. I mean, I never did like the guy. I mean, the best information probably the best thing I ever told my wife was if he ever came up to my front door to never open it, he could wait until I got home if it was so important.
What, you know, it's interesting you say that, Jim, because every other case we hear a serial killer is arrested, all the neighbors say, oh, he was a great guy, we never would have expected anything. I'm not hearing that from you, Jim.
Well, that's why I started speaking out. I heard, oh, he was a nice guy, oh, he's churchgoer, all that. I knew him as a jerk.
What was it about him that you didn't like, Jim?
The way he treated the women on the block. I mean, he was quite rude to them. He would let your dog out and then write you a ticket for your dog being loose. We'd found him in the neighbor's backyard many a time, and the neighbor was gone and home. You know, they were gone at work.
Well, wasn't that his job? He was a municipal compliance officer.
Oh, he took it way out of hand. Do you chase an animal down the street when all the neighborhood kids are out shooting at it with a tranquilizer gun while the kids are running loose?
Oh.
I mean, he was nuts.
All right, Dr. Brodsky, what about that? Sounds like a guy who needs to exercise a lot of control.
Well, he sure does. And I think what we're just hearing from this neighbor is what I call bleed through, that we've got these symptoms of his negative attitudes, his excessive need to take things into his own hands, to harm people when he wanted to harm people, to punish. This is bleeding through into his role as the guy, the officer who's trying to uphold justice, and instead, at the same time, his real nature just kind of shows through just a little bit.
Alafair, you're a former prosecutor. Of course, the $64,000 question is, how did the police catch this guy? And we really don't have a lot of detail on that.
No, they're being very, very quiet with information, which just breeds a lot of speculation.
What's your gut?
I think it's some combination of the floppy disk that was reportedly contained in one of the more recent drops. They were able to locate him through his church through that, and then they began surveillance, and then ultimately it sounds like his daughter's DNA played some kind of confirming role, but I think early reports that she had turned him in seemed to be inaccurate.
Jim Reno, did you want to chime in?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that from what I've been hearing, it was the, you know, how you have to register your Windows systems with Microsoft. What I understood was, I know enough about computers that no matter what computer you use, it puts that label on any disk you make off of it. And I was under the understanding that they checked with Microsoft and the system came back belonging to the church that the disc was made on.
You know, remarkably, everyone in America is on tape somewhere, and Dennis Rader himself appeared on a local news segment some time ago. Take a look at this.
The dogs are somewhat territorial as well as vicious, and we've been trying to round them up and corral them as best as we can, working with the reporting parties of where the sheep were killed.
You know, the most chilling part to me, Alafair, is seeing that this guy wears a badge. When I saw that the BTK killer was caught, and then we see those pictures of him wearing a badge. I don't care if he's just a municipal compliance officer. That's the kind of guy that knocks on the door, you let him in, you answer questions. You know, you don't ask for his pedigree.
Yeah, and it had been speculated in Wichita, based on the way he spoke in that 911 tape and the way some of his early letters were written, that this guy was kind of a wannabe cop type, and people had speculated that he might have some kind of private security job or sort of quasi-law enforcement job.
Right.
And here you find out that it's exactly the position he holds, and he abuses it based on what his neighbors have said.
And there it is. All right, Jim Reno, what about his family, though? They must be surprised as well, and they're also your neighbors.
I haven't seen him since all this has happened. I mean, I knew his wife. She was the sweetest lady. I never had a crossword with her or the kids. I mean, with him, there was 3 times that, you know, I almost went to blows with him, but first time he called the police on me. The second time he took off in his truck. And the third time I couldn't get him to do anything. I called him about every name I could think of. It was right after my neighbor died. It was 2 days later. He was doing one of the things that he always wrote her up for, and I had lost it on him.
Wow. Well, Jim Reno, you must be absolutely chilled.
No, actually, I'm not bothered by him at all.
Well, I'm glad that it was only words between you and him and not anything more than that. Jim Reno, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Brodsky, Alafair Burke, thank you all as well. Next, the secret rituals that could put your child at risk, the hidden horror of hate.